Listening Fanfiction presents Draco Malfoy and the Truth of the Heart, where Draco will hear about this, the 7th installment in the Do It All Over Again series, based on the Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling. Chapter 1. To win a war quickly takes long preparation. There was a knock on Draco's door. He hastily rolled up his enchanted parchment and dropped it onto the bedside table before propping himself up on his elbows. "You can come in," he called. The door opened just enough to reveal his cousin Dora's head. She smiled at him cheerfully, her Slytherin green curly hair unexpectedly stylish, and Draco was about to get into a sitting position, but she stopped him with a chuckle. "Don't bother. Just wanted to tell you we're leaving, Remus and I." "Sure." Draco grinned, stretching back out again. "Have fun, newlyweds." Dora grimaced at him, her face adorably pink, and it made Draco laugh. Her and Lupin had tied the knot in a shotgun wedding only last week. It had been a small affair with only the closest relatives and friends present, and Draco was sure that the speed of the events was entirely motivated by the upcoming war. Not that he could blame his cousin and her now husband, with Dumbledore's funeral still fresh on their minds. Treasuring the time you had with people you loved had suddenly become something of a priority. At any rate, Dora and Lupin seemed happy together, even though Draco could tell that Lupin still worried a lot. It would get better with time, Dora had assured him. Draco was unsure, but he wanted to believe her. "Stop being cheeky, you," she scolded, though she was snorting out laughter through her words. "You used to be a teacher, remember?" "And you never made sex jokes about your teachers?" Draco challenged. "Don't be a hypocrite, Dora." "Most Hogwarts teachers don't exactly inspire sex jokes," she groaned, shuddering. "At least in my days." "Fair enough," Draco allowed. "We got all the centaurs and Witch Weekly's most charming smile winners as teachers, not you." She laughed, shaking her head and starting to back out of the door. "If you make sex jokes about Loca, I am very worried about you, Draco Malfoy." "Not me," he said innocently. "You can have a word with Hermione, though. She drew hearts with his name into her notebooks." She giggled as she closed the door. Draco grinned as he reached towards the bedside table to pick up the enchanted parchment that he had abandoned earlier, unrolling it once more and returning to read it. "Dear Draco, I'm glad to hear about Lupin and Tonks. They both deserve all the happiness they can get. Please give them my regards and tell them that I'm sorry that I couldn't be there for the wedding. Kingsley and Mr. Weasley were here earlier this afternoon to talk to the Dursleys about going into hiding. They're still not very enthusiastic, as you can imagine. They seem to have taken more to Kingsley than to Mr. Weasley. Maybe predictably, after Fred and George fed Dudley that candy that summer of our 4th year. But I do think they'll take lots more convincing. It's going to be a tiring couple of weeks. Have you read Skeeter's interview in The Prophet? I know it's Skeeter, and I know not to trust a word she says, but I'm unsure what to think. I feel like there's so much I didn't know about Dumbledore, you know? I miss you. I can't wait to see you again. Love, Harry." Draco frowned at the letter before picking up one of the self-inking quills from the twins' shop and starting to pen out a response. "Dear Harry, I miss you too. It sucks that you're once again stuck at this house, but we know it's not for much longer. Hold on. I can imagine that your aunt and uncle aren't thrilled, but, well, bugger for them. Life's not fair. If they want to stay alive, they better listen to the order. My compassion for them is limited after the way they've mistreated you for your entire life." I read Skeeter's interview. She's a slug, and whatever information she has, she got it underhanded and she twisted it to look as bad as possible. I understand your worries, though. You only met Dumbledore towards the end of his life, and he's always been a very private person. You only shared a small time frame with him, and you've never really gotten much information about his earlier life. I'm not sure if that means you didn't know him, though. You don't tell me everything about what happened before we met, and I don't tell you every detail about my childhood at the manor either. Still, we know each other, don't we? Secrets are natural. Sometimes it doesn't have to mean that a person doesn't trust you enough to tell you about those events. Sometimes not telling can have other reasons. So please don't let this pull you down too much. You have enough to worry about without this. Love, Draco. Draco had barely written the last word when there was another knock on his door. "Looks like I'm popular tonight," he muttered, rolling up his parchment and dropping both it and the quill back onto the bedside table. "Yes," he called, a little louder. The door opened to reveal, much to his surprise, a bushy-haired, somber-faced Hermione. Draco scrambled to sit up, blinking. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "I wasn't expecting you." "I arrived at the Better this afternoon," she told him, stepping into the room and closing the door behind herself.
I felt like seeing you, so I flew over. I hope that's okay.
Of course it's okay. Draco nodded, patting the free spot on the bed beside him. As she sat down, Draco scanned her face, noting that her eyes were red and bloodshot. Are you all right? He asked tentatively. She gulped, her only response a helpless shrug. Draco waited, granting her some time to gather herself, and when she finally spoke, her voice was soft and trembling.
I altered my parents' memories, she told him, not meeting his eyes. They don't remember having a daughter. I made them think their heart's desire is to leave the country and move to Australia, so that's what they're going to do. They'll be out of harm's way like that.
Oh, Hermione, Draco whispered, his heart heavy. I'm so sorry. She looked at him then, eyes swimming with fresh tears, and he reached out to pull her into a tight hug. His friend melted into the comfort he offered, crying into his shoulder for a long time, and Draco patiently stroked her curls and let the flood ebb away. When she resurfaced at long last, furiously rubbing at her cheeks, Draco still hadn't said a word, because what was there to say? What did you say to your friend when they had just separated from their family to keep them safe? So instead of speaking, Draco procured a tissue for Hermione, which she took with a grateful smile, cleaning her face. She was the one to break their silence eventually.
I'm going to track them down once the war is over,
she told him, her voice still wobbly. Of course you will, he agreed. I wouldn't have expected anything less.
The spell should be reversible, she muttered. I put some research into it before casting. I'm sure I can do it.
If anyone can, it's you, Draco smiled. And if you fail, there are trained wizards at St. Mungo's with that field as a specialty. You can always consult them.
You're right,
she nodded. It will be fine, he assured her. Don't worry, you did the right thing.
Thank you, she sighed. I really needed to hear that.
Draco nodded, pulling her into his side again. She leaned her cheek against his shoulder, and they fell back into a comfortable silence. Only after a couple of minutes did she ask,
Have you heard from Harry?
Daily, he noted. He's struggling with Dumbledore's death, to be honest. But he's safe and healthy.
I expected him to be struggling,
Hermione admitted, her voice sad.
First Sirius, now Dumbledore. Harry always seems to be losing the people he grows attached to, doesn't he?
All the more reason for us to look out for him, Draco shrugged. We'll have to be a support system.
Well, let's be honest, you've been a major part of his support system for about 6 years now, she muttered. Ron and I try our best, but you're the main pillar here. We all know it.
Draco pressed down on the urge to argue with her, knowing that she put in a word that would diminish himself and his own value towards Harry. So instead he changed the subject. Miss Weasley isn't exactly thrilled about our plans to drop out of school, he said, making Hermione look up at them wearily.
How?
She inquired.
She didn't say anything about it earlier, but that might be because I was too worked up.
Yeah, Draco grimaced. She's been prodding me and Weasley all summer about what exactly we plan to do once we drop out. She even had words with Mother about it.
What did your mother say?
Hermione asked, biting her lip. That is her business, and that if she thinks she can stop me from following Harry anywhere, she's obviously never met me. Draco snorted. For some reason, that didn't go over all too well.
So your mother is really okay with us going Horcrux hunting?
Hermione asked, surprised. Well, she doesn't know that's what we're doing, of course, Draco frowned. But I explained to her that Harry's got a mission from Dumbledore and I'll accompany him. And while she was not exactly pleased with the prospect of me putting myself in danger, she knew she wouldn't be able to change my mind. There's also the fact that once full-on war breaks out, she will have to go into hiding, and she knows there's no way I would have accompanied her into whichever safe haven she chose to wait things out. Mother is a realist, you see. She knows how to pick her battles.
Well,
Hermione sighed, making a face.
Miss Weasley isn't. If she's anything, she's big-headed.
Who's in the family? Draco snorted, smiling unrepentantly when Hermione sent him a half-hearted glare. Anyway, consider yourself warned. She will nag at you, try to get our real mission out of you, and try to change your mind.
Right,
Hermione nodded.
I'll be on my toes.
She bit her lip, looking thoughtful before she added,
Talking about our mission, I need you to pack what you're going to take in case we need to take off quickly.
Okay, Draco nodded.
I put an undetectable extension charm on a purse I've got at the Burrow, she told him. I'll put everything you give me in there so we can transport it back and forth without issue.
Smart, Draco complimented. I love it.
Thanks, she smiled. I've also got a couple of books I want you to have a look at. I'll give them to you tomorrow. They're about Horcruxes. How in Merlin's name did you get your hands on those?
Draco asked, stunned.
I summoned them after Dumbledore's death,
Hermione admitted sheepishly.
They must have been in his office, and they came flying through the window. I don't think he would have minded, you? Oh, he'd have protected them better?
Definitely not, Draco scoffed. He wanted us to destroy them, so he should sure give us the info on how to do it. Did you find anything?
There's some information in a couple of chapters, but I want your opinion on how exactly to interpret it,
she said. Okay, Draco nodded. Bring them over and I'll read through them as quickly as I can.
I will,
Hermione nodded.
Also, there is something else I wanted to discuss with you before Harry arrived.
Okay, Draco frowned. How was that?
Godric's Hollow, she pointed out. I know Harry wants to go there, and I understand why, but I think it's dangerous, Draco.
Draco grimaced, glancing at the parchment resting on his bedside table. The handle had already turned to golden again in notification of a new message. This had already occurred to him, and he was unsurprised that Hermione was addressing the issue. He knew, though, how much going meant to Harry.
I think Voldemort will be expecting to go there,
Hermione pressed, staring him down.
It might be a trap.
I know, Draco sighed, but I don't think Harry cares, Hermione.
Well, he should care, Hermione argued. I understand why he wants to go, but it's not worth risking his life over.
I agree, Draco muttered. It's just... You've said it. He's lost so many people. He lost Dumbledore, Sirius, his parents, and he's never been at their graves, not once. If that's what he needs to gather the strength to do what needs to be done,
under normal circumstances, I'd move heaven and hell to grant it to him,
Hermione promised, her voice soft.
But Draco, this is not normal circumstances. This is war. And being in the wrong place at the wrong time can mean death for all of us. Do we really want to risk that?
Draco sighed and shook his head. No, he agreed. Of course we don't. You're right.
I'm glad you see it my way, she smiled tentatively. Because we both know I'll need you if I'm going to convince Harry.
That's going to be fun, Draco muttered, his chest tight at the prospect.
We'll do it together, Hermione promised. It's for the best, Draco.
Draco nodded. Hermione reached out to entwine their fingers, squeezing once in unspoken comfort. Draco decided it was best to convince Harry of the dangers they would probably face when visiting Godric's Hollow face to face. Draco knew that they'd always communicated best when they could look at and touch each other, and he could feel the strain on Harry's nerves with each message they exchanged as it was. Better to not spring a discussion like that at him when he had the opportunity to put the parchment away and effectively run from it. And it wasn't long until they would pick Harry up from his confinement anyway. The Orator was already planning Harry's transport, comparing the benefits of different strategies and weighing of their risks. Sometimes Dora would let something slip towards Draco. She'd play it off as an accident in front of her husband, but they both knew she honestly wanted his opinion, which Draco was all too happy to give. While the Order prepared for the rescue mission, Draco and Hermione prepared for the Horcrux hunt. Draco had already packed the selection of clothes he deemed practical for travel, plus books and devices they might have a use for. Hermione had received them eagerly and put them away into her enchanted beaded bag, which Draco had inspected in amazement when she had shown it to him. Draco had also read through the books on Horcruxes Hermione had handed him, and they had determined that very few substances available were indeed destructive enough to qualify as a suitable weapon against them. We have to put it beyond magical repair, Draco muttered, frowning as he clutched the book to keep it propped up against his legs, Hermione leaning against his side to reread the relevant paragraph. They had withdrawn into Draco's room at Andromeda's place. They had found it was almost impossible to have privacy at the Burrow nowadays, with the ongoing wedding preparations and Miss Weasley breathing down their necks, determined not to leave them to their own devices lest they furthered their plans to leave.
And since our kind is obsessed with finding ways to fix stuff, there's little that we don't somehow have a magical solution for. Like the killing curse, but we can't apply that to an object.
But Harry destroyed a Horcrux before,
Hermione reminded him.
the diary with the basilisk find.
Right, Draco muttered. Basilisk venom would do it, I guess. It's properly destructive, but we don't have any of that, do we?
Well, no,
Hermione sighed.
Do you have any other clues on substances that might be equally suitable?
Well, there are other creatures, but that doesn't exactly help us either. There's also fiend fire, but I'm not stupid enough to start one. Hermione shuddered, obviously agreeing with that assessment. Draco frowned, biting his lip. I'm not sure, but I read this thing about arithman cysts creating a temporary magical void that turns destructive once the magic rushes back inside. Like the sudden pressure cracks whatever you put in the void. It might be enough to break a Horcrux because it was raw magic that broke it in the first place.
I never heard about that,
Hermione muttered, eyes alight.
Can you dig it up again?
I can try, Draco nodded. I think it was some journal at the manor, but I think I have notes somewhere. So Draco spent the remaining time until Harry's arrival researching possible ways to destroy Horcruxes. He even enlisted Dobby for help, who was all too glad to be of service, going through the Hogwarts library behind Madame Pince's back and bringing him back copies of relevant sources. It was tedious work, though, lots of theory and little concrete progress, as arithmancy tended to be. As Harry's birthday finally drew closer, though, the plans for Harry's retrieval from his muggle hovel finalized, and Draco's focus shifted. The Order had laid a false trail through the Ministry that Harry was going to get picked up the day before his birthday, but they had really put together a quite different strategy. 5 days before Harry was to turn 17, on July 27th, they'd all collectively fly to Little Winging Surrey. They all included him, Hermione and Ron, the Weasley twins and Bill, Fleur, Dora, and Lupin, Mr. Weasley, Hagrid, Kingsley, and Mad-Eye Moody. The original plan had been to have Moody take Harry by sidelong apparition, but that had run into thin air when Pius Thicknees had gone over to the Dark Lord's side and had made it a punishable offense to connect number 4 Privet Drive to the Flu Network, place a port key there, or apparate in or out. So they had eventually come up with something more complicated, something that required that many people to be present for the operation. They were going to leave the house in 7 individual pairs, and each of them would have a polyjuiced Harry amongst them, said Hagrid, who would guard the real Harry. They would all take off in different directions, with different means of transportation, to different safe houses the Order had prepared, and through the Death Eaters that were sure to be waiting for them off their track. After all, with 7 Harry Potters taking off into the air before them, how were they to tell which one was the real one? Draco could see the flaws in their plan, of course, and he knew that Harry would scream "Bloody murder!" as soon as it was presented to him. He hated the idea of other people putting themselves into danger for him, especially after what had happened in June. Draco could tell from his messages that the whole thing was still haunting him. And now, having 5 of his friends and his boyfriend pretend to be him while people were out there trying to murder him. Yeah, Harry was not going to like that at all. But he was going to have to swallow it, and Draco was going to help as best as he could. Hermione and the others had made it very clear that this was part of his job that night. They were to meet on a playground just outside Privet Drive under the cover of the darkness and under disillusionment chimes. Most of them apparated there, but Kingsley and Hagrid arrived with alternate transports, namely Thestrals and Sirius's old bike. They'd still timed their arrival perfectly, and just as Hagrid killed his engine, the last party appeared at his side, Fred and George. They then mounted their respective brooms, bikes, or Thestrals, and flew the rest of the way to the house of Harry's aunt and uncle, landing in the backyard. Harry must have heard the sound of Hagrid's engine, because just as they landed, he tore open the back door, stepping outside with wide eyes. Hermione stood closest to him, just having dismounted from the Thestral she shared with Kingsley, and she flung herself at him with a fierceness that made him stagger. He was soon surrounded by people beaming at everyone and exchanging greetings, but as soon as his eyes landed on Draco, the smile died, replaced by an expression of such intense longing that it made Draco feel unsteady. Before Draco could even open his mouth to go after him, Harry had crossed the distance between them with quick, swift steps and pulled Draco against him, catching their lips in an urgent kiss that took Draco's breath away. He heard the Weasley twins giggle, Weasley groaned.
Lupin cleared his throat, though he sounded amused. Moody, though, was far less patient with their little romantic display.
But if this is not some trashy nutball of the female student population and Hogwarts hides underneath our beds, this is war, and we have to get on the cover before anyone sees us.
Draco couldn't help but grin as he pulled away, smiling fondly at Harry's clear embarrassment. You can kiss me all you want once we've got you safely back at the Burrow, Draco whispered, pressing another chaste kiss to his lips before pulling away. Now let's go before Moody sends me away for being a distraction. They made their way into the house one by one, Harry directing them through the living room and into the kitchen. Draco looked at the decor in distaste, gingerly leaning against an empty counter. He was unsure if this was how all Muggles decorated their homes or if Harry's relatives had a particularly bad taste. But he did not care for their interior style. Then again, he did not care for Harry's relatives, so it was probably their fault. Said relatives had, thankfully, been moved from their home earlier this evening to a safe destination and were now guarded by Order members Hestia Jones and Daedalus Diggle. It was a good thing that they weren't around for this, honestly. Had Draco come face to face with them now, properly, for the first time ever, he was unsure what he would have done. I wasn't expecting this many of you, Harry exclaimed, looking into the round inquiringly.
Change of plan,
Moody shrugged, proceeding to explain the pious thick-knees situation and why they'd had to abandon the sight-along apparition. He then proceeded to lay out their new plan for him bit by bit, and Draco watched Harry as he did, waiting for the realization of what was going to happen to settle with his boyfriend.
You'll be flying to Tox's parents. Once you're within the borders of the protective enchantments we've put on the house, you'll be able to use a portkey to the Burrow. Any questions?
Yes, Harry said, eyebrows raised, and
Draco braced himself.
Maybe they won't know which of the 12 secure houses I'm heading for at first, but won't it be sort of obvious once... He held in, glancing at the round to count before continuing. 14 of us fly off towards Tonks's parents.
Ah, Moody said. I forgot to mention the key point. 14 of us will be flying to Tonks's parents. There will be 7 Harry Potters moving to the skies tonight, each of them with a companion, each pair headed for a different safe house.
And there they had it. Moody withdrew a flask of polyjuice potion from his cloak, and Harry shook his head, face pale and eyes wide. No, he called. No way. Harry, Draco sighed, turning to him and reaching out to touch his shoulder. Please calm down and listen. No, I'm not going to let you talk me into risking your life to save mine and everyone else's along the way. Harry hissed angrily, withdrawing from his touch as if it burned him. I know you have some kind of martyr complex or whatever. Look who's talking. Draco rolled his eyes. I told you he was going to react this way, Hermione muttered in the background. Because this is the first time Draco, or any of us for that matter, have risked our lives for it, Weasley grumbled. Yes, well, I think that's exactly the problem. Hermione sighed, and Draco threw her an impatient look, which made her fall silent at last. Then he turned back to Harry. Okay, Harry, real talk, Draco began, forcing his voice to stay gentle while choosing his words so that they would deliver the message in a clear and efficient way. We've been backed into a corner, and our choices are limited. This is the best we could come up with. Everyone here is of age, and everyone cares about you. We know what we're doing. You can't do it if I don't cooperate. Harry snapped at his stubborn glint of his eyes. You need me to give you some hair. Oh, Harry, Draco snorted, shaking his head. You really should have thought twice before dating a Slytherin. Excuse me? Harry ground out, eyebrows raised. What the bloody hell are you talking about? What I'm saying, Harry, Draco replied, voice smooth and grey eyes locked on stubborn, if not slightly disconcerted green ones. He took a step closer to him, crowding Harry's personal space, and he could tell that it ruffled his boyfriend's feathers. Is that in all these years you have known me, you might have forgotten why I was sorted into my house. When I have someone to protect Harry, I don't play by the rules. I don't take no for an answer, so you can shout up a storm. I don't care. We're doing this. End of discussion. And with that, Draco used their proximity and Harry's distraction to reach up and pluck a couple of hairs from a spot just behind his ear. Harry snarled, eyes wide, but Draco did not wait to listen to his complaints. He had already turned around and stepped towards Moody, who had uncapped the flask of polyjuice potion and held it up for him to drop the hairs into it. Much obliged, Mr. Malfoy. Moody nodded his head with the ghost of a smile. The potion had begun to smoke as soon as the hairs had been added, and was now changing color from its prior mud-like state to a clear, bright gold.
"Oh, you look much tastier than Crabbe and Goyle, Harry!"
Hermione exclaimed, but quickly amended at Weasley's raised eyebrow and Harry's unimpressed expression.
"How do you know what I mean? Goyle's potion was like bouquets."
"We can pick Potter's line up over here, please,"
said Moody. Draco threw a quick glance over his shoulder at Harry, but the other one was pointedly not looking in his direction. Instead, he glared at Moody as Weasley, Hermione, Fred, George, and Fleur lined up, and Draco sighed quietly as he joined them. Moody was filling the potion into what looked like 6 shot glasses, and each of them was handed one.
"All together, then?"
Fred shrugged, motioning as if to toast before lifting the glass to his lips. The other 5 followed his example. The first taste of the potion was not bad, as Draco had expected. On the contrary, it tasted as the Amortentia potion had smelled to him. But then his skin started to crawl, and his bones seemed to tingle, and he gasped, closing his eyes. He felt violently sick, but nothing was coming up. He felt his extremities shrinking down, though his torso and shoulders seemed to widen. His face felt strange, like 1,000 tiny insects were crawling beneath his skin, and then all of a sudden, everything stopped. He opened his eyes again and blinked when the world around him was blurry and unfocused. Somewhere next to him, Fred and George said in Harry's voice, "Wow, we're identical. I don't know, I think I'm still better looking," one of them argued. "Bah," Fleur shuddered directly at Draco's side. "Bill, don't look at me. I'm hideous." "Hey," Draco said automatically, offended for his boyfriend's sake. "Careful there."
"Those clothes are a bit roomy. I've got smaller here,"
Moody announced, indicating the first of 2 sacks he was holding up into the arm.
"And vice versa. Don't forget the glasses. There are 6 pairs in the pocket."
"As if we'd forget," Draco muttered. "We'd fly into a tree without them."
"And when you're dressed, there's luggage in the other sack,"
Moody finished, ignoring Draco's comments. He set the sacks down for all of them to have their go at them, which they promptly did. The first thing Draco did was getting his hands on a pair of glasses and putting them on, sighing in relief when the world around him became clear again. "Thank Marlin," he groaned, surprised to find the real Harry standing at his side, watching the scene in front of him with an expression of absent-minded horror. "You never mentioned that you were actually blind. When the war is over, we're having your eyesight magically corrected. Did you hear me?" "All right." Harry shrugged, eyes still on the other Harry Potters in front of them, who were quite carelessly undressing, and Draco froze, flushing as he took in his boyfriend's body in various states of undress. "Hey," he called indignantly, "could you, I don't know, show a little more respect for Harry's privacy or something? Would you like him to parade your body around in public like that?"
"Oh, Malfoy, get a grip and get dressed,"
Moody snapped, but at least Hermione looked a little bit abashed, and Harry glanced at him with a grateful smile, the earlier coldness gone from his expression. "Here, let me hold this," he offered, taking the clothes Draco was supposed to change into from Draco's hands so we could focus on changing out of his own first. "Thanks," Draco muttered, hurriedly unbuttoning his white dress shirt, decidedly not looking at himself as he did. It would be weird getting aroused by the body he was currently occupying while changing his clothes, not to mention inconvenient considering what they had to do in a couple of minutes. He shrugged out of his shirt and into Harry's t-shirt, which was a copy of one Draco had given him for his birthday last year, so it fitted snugly, before shimmying out of his now too long trousers and putting on Harry's comfortably worn jeans. Putting on Harry's trainers was a weird sensation. He himself didn't own any shoe wear like that, but his own black leather shoes were now 2 numbers too large for his feet, so there was no question of wearing them. Not to mention it would probably give him away. When he straightened himself up again, Harry was frowning at him, looking decidedly unhappy. "This is so weird," he mumbled. "Good to know it's not a kink of yours." Draco snorted, and Harry's eyes widened and over. "Discussing the important question, I see," one of the Weasley twins commented from across the room, already in full everywhere. "Shut it." Draco rolled his eyes, reaching for the second sack and pulling out the last duplicate of Harry's luggage and a cage with a stuffed snowy owl that looked like Hedwig. Draco threw a quick look at the real Hedwig across the room next to Harry's actual luggage. She had puffed up her feathers at the sight of her doppelgangers, apparently displeased.
"Good,"
Moody said, calling everyone's attention upon him again.
"The pairs will be as follows. Ron will be with me, my groom. Weasley made a face but did not argue. Arthur and Fred? I'm George. The addressed twin scowled. Can't you even tell us apart when we're Harry? Sorry, George. I'm only yanking your one. I'm Fred, really. Enough messing around. The other one. George or Fred or whoever. You're with Ramus. All on broom. Miss Delacour? I'm taking Fleur on Thestral. Bill cut in. She's not that fond of brooms. Fleur walked over to him with a dreamy look on his face, one that had never crossed Harry's face, even when he looked at Draco, and it made him recoil. Just going to with Kingsley, again by Thestral. Which lays you and me, Draco. Dora smiled, appearing at his side and slinging an arm around his shoulder, which was far easier for her now that he was not a whole head taller than her. Draco grinned at her, quite pleased with the arrangement. And you're with me, Harry. That all right? Hagrid asked Harry anxiously. We'll be on right. Brooms and Thestrals can't take you out, see? Not a lot of room on a seat with me on it, though, so you'll be in the sidecar. That's great, Harry said, though Draco could tell that he wasn't very enthusiastic. We think the Death Eaters will expect you to be on a broom, Moody explained. Snape's had plenty of time to tell them everything about you he's never mentioned before, so if we do run into any Death Eaters, we're betting they'll choose one of the Potters who look at home on a broomstick. Harry glanced at Draco with that, looking more than a little troubled with that reasoning, and Draco reached out to entwine their fingers, squeezing his hand. It did nothing to vanquish the worry in his eyes. All right then, Moody said, tying up the sack with everyone's clothes in it and leading the way back to the door. Draco reluctantly let go of Harry's hand to follow. I make it 3 minutes before we need to leave. No point locking the back door. It won't keep the Death Eaters out when they come looking. Come on.